This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is about a system that was designed to save itself. And what happens when it can't decide who is in charge? At an hour when most of the country was asleep, a constitutional mechanism quietly activated. No cameras, no vote, no warning. And by morning, the United States was no longer sure who held authority, not because the rules were unclear, but because the rules assumed something fragile. They assumed consent. They assumed compliance. They assumed that power, once questioned, would politely stand down. That assumption is now under stress. You can already feel it in the markets, in the silence between official statements, in the way institutions hesitate before acting. If you are watching this, stay with me. Not because something exploded, but because something failed too. And that failure doesn't announce itself. It spreads. So let's slow this down. Let's talk about what actually runs the system now, and why that answer is more dangerous than it sounds. What actually controls a system like this is not the Constitution, not elections, not even laws. What controls it is coordination. The quiet agreement that everyone will recognize the same center of gravity, the same chain of command, the same definition of legitimacy. For decades, that agreement made the system look strong, predictable, stable. But stability was never the same as resilience. Because when authority is challenged, the system does not ask who is right. It asks who is obeyed. And obedience is not theoretical. It is physical. It lives in locked doors, in unanswered phones, in orders that wait an extra second before being carried out. This is why moments like this are never really about leaders. They are about institutions discovering in real time whether they still recognize each other. The danger is not that someone breaks the rules. The danger is that multiple actors claim to be following them. That is how a single system becomes two, not with force, but with hesitation. And the longer that hesitation lasts, the faster everything underneath it begins to move. Because this did not start today. It has been building quietly for years. What changed was not a law. It was a habit. There was a time when emergency powers were imagined as rare, almost theoretical. Something you studied, not something you rehearsed. Then they became procedures, checklists, templates sitting on servers already drafted. Before, legitimacy flowed in one direction, from election to office to authority. Now it flickers. It waits for confirmation. It refreshes like a stalled screen. This shift did not arrive with sirens. It arrived with normalization. Each small exception made the next one easier. Each temporary measure stayed just long enough to feel permanent. Each edge case taught the system how to bend, without ever asking what happens when bending becomes routine. The most dangerous changes do not feel radical. They feel administrative. They feel boring until the moment they are activated all at once. That is when institutions realize they have practiced the mechanics of emergency, but never agreed on who gets to pull the lever. And once that question is open, it does not stay contained, because the system is already in motion, and the first visible shock was never going to be the last. The first visible rupture did not come with an announcement. It came with confusion. Orders began moving without confirmation, then stopping, then restarting, slightly altered. Phones rang and were not answered. Briefings were delayed, then canceled, then quietly rescheduled somewhere else. Statements were drafted, rewritten, and never released. Nothing dramatic on its own, that's the trap. Because in a functioning system, hesitation is harmless. In a divided system, hesitation is evidence. Evidence that no one is sure which authorization is final. Evidence that every decision now carries personal risk. Evidence that responsibility is being quietly rerouted away from the center. You could see it in the way language changed, pending clarification, out of an abundance of caution, awaiting guidance. Those phrases are not neutral, they are shock absorbers. They appear when institutions are buying time, when they are waiting to see which version of reality survives the day. If you are still watching, stay with me. Because this moment, the pause, is not stability. It is the system holding its breath. And breath holding does not last. Because the machinery underneath does not stop moving just because no one agrees on who's driving it. This is where the system reveals what it actually is. Power does not move through speeches. It moves through processes that were never designed to argue with each other. Every institution is built to absorb risk by passing it downward. Legal risk, political risk, moral risk. When authority is clear, that flow is invisible. When authority fractures, the flow reverses. Suddenly, the safest position is inaction. Delay becomes self-defense. Procedure becomes cover. Those who benefit are not the loudest actors. They are the ones who can wait, who can afford paralysis, who can survive uncertainty longer than everyone else. The cost does not land evenly. It lands on the edges, on agencies that must act without clarity, on officials who must choose between two signatures, on systems that cannot pause, only malfunction. This is how damage spreads without a single illegal act. Everyone follows a rule, just not the same one. And once that logic takes hold, the crisis stops being about who is right. It becomes about who breaks first, because the mechanism is now exposed. And mechanisms, once visible, invite pressure, which is why the next phase always moves faster and hits harder. Things stop syncing, messages cross, then collide, then disappear. One order moves forward, another cancels it, a third references neither. Timelines compress. Decisions that used to take days now demand minutes. But minutes still require permission. Silence spreads, not calm silence, protective silence. Meetings shrink, attendees change, rooms are booked then abandoned. Every action now asks the same question: who will be blamed if this is wrong? So nothing moves cleanly, everything stutters. Systems designed for certainty choke on ambiguity. They don't fail loudly, they fail unevenly. A gate opens, another stays closed. Information leaks upward slower than pressure builds downward. And somewhere inside this delay, the system crosses a line it cannot uncross. Because once force begins waiting for authorization, and authorization begins waiting for consensus, control no longer belongs to the center. It belongs to whoever acts next. And that is when hesitation turns from caution into invitation. Here is where this reaches you. Not as a headline, not as a legal question, but as friction in your life. You feel it when systems you rely on slow down without explanation, when decisions that used to be automatic suddenly require review, when authority becomes a rumor instead of a fact. You are not briefed on this. You are buffered from it. That buffering feels like inconvenience at first, then uncertainty, then cost. Markets hesitate before they drop. Employers hesitate before they commit. Institutions hesitate before they protect. And in that space, risk is quietly transferred to you. You absorb it in prices, in delays, in the sense that no one is fully in charge anymore. If this feels abstract, stay with me. Because abstraction is how systems hide damage until it becomes personal. Pay attention to how often you are told to wait, to check back, to trust that clarity is coming. Clarity does not arrive on its own. It is enforced. And when enforcement is contested, the burden always slides outward, which is why this does not stop at one building or one city. It spreads. Outside the system, the signal is not confusion. It is opportunity. Allies do not see process. They see delay. Adversaries do not see law. They see hesitation. Phones are answered more carefully. Statements are parsed for tone instead of content. Commitments are treated as provisional. This is how credibility erodes without a single formal reversal, not through declaration, through doubt. Markets price uncertainty faster than governments can explain it. Supply chains reroute quietly. Capital pauses, then moves. Nothing dramatic. Nothing televised, just small adjustments stacking on top of each other. And once the world begins adjusting, it does not wait for clarity to return. Because clarity in moments like this is no longer assumed. It must be demonstrated. The danger is not that someone miscalculates. The danger is that everyone recalculates at the same time. Because coordination is global now, and fragmentation travels faster than authority, which means this is no longer a domestic problem. It is a systems problem, and systems do not care about borders. They only care about stress. From here, there are only three directions this can move. The first is adjustment. Institutions quietly choose a center, not because it is perfect, but because uncertainty becomes more dangerous than error. Authority reconsolidates. Damage is contained, barely. The second is erosion. Nothing breaks outright, nothing resolves either. Dual legitimacy lingers. Every decision becomes conditional, every action provisional. The system keeps functioning, but at a lower voltage. Trust drains slowly, capacity follows. The third is rupture. That happens when hesitation collides with force, when two lawful orders meet the same gate, when someone decides waiting is riskier than acting. Rupture does not announce itself as collapse. It announces itself as necessity. All three paths are already in motion. They are not choices made once. They are choices made repeatedly by people deciding in seconds what feels safer. And the most dangerous part is this: the system does not tell you which path you're on until it's too late to change it. Because acceleration is invisible at first, you only notice it when stopping is no longer an option. There is a temptation in moments like this to wait for reassurance, for a statement, for a signal that the system corrected itself. That temptation is part of the danger, because systems under stress rarely fail where you expect. They fail where attention has already moved on. Nothing in this story requires bad actors, only unresolved authority, only time, only pressure. The mechanism did exactly what it was designed to do. And in doing so, it revealed what it was never designed to handle: not defiance, not delay, not dual obedience. If this ends quietly, it will not be because the risk was small. It will be because someone absorbed it, out of sight. And if it does not end quietly, the warning signs will not look like alarms. They will look like procedure. So don't look away. Don't assume this is finished because the noise fades. Follow what happens next. Follow who is obeyed. Follow who waits. Because the most important question was never who holds power. It was whether the system can survive. Not knowing, and we are about to find out. If you want to understand what comes after this moment, stay with me.